Hello and welcome, nerds, to episode 6 of the Keepers by the Dozen Fantasy Football Podcast. We just finished round 1 of the NFL draft. Everybody was sitting there praying that their keepers and their franchise players didn't get affected. I think the league made it out pretty good. I don't think anybody was got destroyed by the first round of the NFL draft. I think day 2 is going to be interesting coming up this evening, rounds 2 and 3. This is when those running backs start to come off the board and things can get a little bit dicey. But let's talk about day 1. Let's talk about round 1 of the NFL draft. You had the first 3 picks were chalk, right? Caleb Williams, who was Vegas had him as minus 200,000 betting odds to be the first player taken off the board to the Bears, and he was. Next, all the mock drafts and the experts had Jaden Daniels going to Washington, which he did, followed by the Patriots taking Drake May at 3. They need a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. Chicago needed a quarterback. And those 3 quarterbacks went off 1, 2, and 3. Pick 4 it didn't take long for me to become a very happy man. Pick 4 was probably the pick that made me the most happy last evening. And that was Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I'm not a Cardinals fan. I am the owner of Kyler Murray. I was a little bit interested or slightly interested in Kyler going into 2024 as a possible keeper option. With Marvin Harrison Jr. going there, that makes it way more tantalizing. Let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit. I mean, you're talking about a wide receiver, that first wide receiver off the board, obviously at number 4. He checks all the boxes. He's, you talk about he's 6'4", 205. He's the son of a Hall of Famer. He does everything really well. He's quick. He has great hands. He's a great route runner. He can play both the slot and the outside, so he's versatile in that wide receiver position. And I think he slides in and is instantly the wide receiver 1 for Kyler in that Arizona offense. Like I said previously, I was already interested in Kyler just because of that rushing baseline. Kyler is one of those quarterbacks that has enough rushing work where you could see the path and the ability to be a top 3 fantasy quarterback. Not everybody has that. I mean, you have those pocket passers like Lawrence and Mahomes. They rely on high number of touchdowns every year. And we've seen Patty Mahomes struggle in the touchdown area, especially last year. He went from he had over 40 touchdowns the year before. He was down to, I think, 20, high 20s, 27 or so. And that reflected his fantasy finish. So Kyler is definitely interesting now that Marvin Harrison Jr. joins the fold. That made me very happy. And the flip side of that, the pick that made me the most upset or sad came very shortly after with Malik Neighbors going to the New York Giants. Now, nothing against Neighbors. I think he's a great prospect. This draft class was touted as a very top-heavy wide receiver draft class. You have the big 3 and then kind of like everybody else. So the big 3 being Harrison, Neighbors, and Romeo Odunze, yeah, which we won't talk about, but he also went to the Bears to join Caleb Williams, which is interesting. But Neighbors, right? He draws comparisons to Jamar Chase, right? The scouts and have kind of given that comparison. Is it just because he's coming from LSU? It probably helps that he was also donning that LSU jersey, and they watched Chase do work in college in the LSU. And again, nothing against Neighbors. I just hate the landing spot. So first and foremost, the Giants' offense and team, I think, is terrible. They, losing Saquon in the offseason to Philadelphia didn't make them a better offense. I really don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball. And second, to the fact that they don't have a great quarterback to pass the ball to Neighbors, is that they've had a history the past actually 3 years, including this year, of drafting similar wide receivers, similar size and archetypes and styles. So you had Wandale. They drafted in the second round in 2022. You had Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee that they drafted in the third round last year. And they haven't shown that they can scheme or put them in a position to be successful because they've done nothing for fantasy. So will they be able to, is Neighbors that much better than both of those? And the talent will win out and he'll just be productive because he's a beast. Or will it be more of the same with a disappointing Wandale? Because people had high hopes for Wandale and Jalen Hyatt coming out of college. Not as much as Neighbors, obviously Neighbors being like a top 10 pick here in the NFL draft. But they really, I hate the Giants. And regardless of me hating the Giants, their offense sucks. And then the biggest surprise of the draft to everybody, including me, was, of course, the Atlanta Falcons taking Michael Penix Jr. Now, I saw some scouts say that Penix was their second QB on their big board, just behind Caleb, but a lot of people did not agree with him. Cousins, I first reported that Cousins had no idea, but I read an article in The Athletic. When Cousins signed there, he knew, they told him that they were going to take a quarterback in this draft. They just said it was going to be in the later rounds. So them taking a quarterback at, what was it, 6? It was very shocking. They just gave, the pick just doesn't make any sense. They signed Cousins in the offseason to a 4-year, $180 million contract, $100 million of that, which is guaranteed. So, I mean, I'd have to look. I didn't look into what the cap hit would be at, in the succeeding years, if they could just kind of cut him or bench him, or whether he won't be that big of a cap hit. But it just makes no sense. It's head scratching for sure. So, and the most interesting pick of the draft in the first round, I believe, is Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from Texas, headed to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, it's interesting to note that Worthy ran a 4.2 40, which has set the NFL Combine record. He is the fastest player to ever run a 40 time at the Combine. So this dude is fast. You think Kansas City and you think Patrick Mahomes and those high-powered offenses in the past, they had Tyreek Hill. They haven't had Tyreek Hill the past couple of years, and Patty Mahomes has struggled in fantasy. I mean, they've won, obviously, but as a fantasy QB, Patty Mahomes has struggled, and the offense just hasn't been as explosive. Now, they've balanced themselves out with a decent running game with Pacheco and a great defense last year. But you have to think, and it's easy to draw comparisons to Xavier Worthy and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek, speedster on the outside. If he comes into that Hill role, right? If he comes in and isn't even a shadow of Tyreek Hill and can fill that role even a little bit, that's going to help Patty Mahomes and Travis Kelce tremendously. Now, you saw Patrick Mahomes, his average depth of target dropped a full yard from 2022 to 2023. So he's definitely missing Tyreek Hill and being able to throw those long bomb touchdowns. Now, in doing so and having that kind of that long field or downfield stretch wide receiver that can just blow by everybody, that's also going to help Kelce in a way that Kelce will have more room underneath and wide open because he lives in the middle of the field, right? So he's just going to sit there. If you have that field stretching wide receiver, he's just going to sit down in the middle of the field, catch those passes, and that should help his fantasy production too. So it's interesting. That pick is interesting for the Mahomes owner, for the Kelce owner, and I think whoever drafts Xavier Worthy. I think the hype on Xavier Worthy, because he's so fast, because we've seen such success in that role in Kansas City with Tyreek Hill. By draft season comes around in August, I think his draft price is going to be pretty steep. Now, somebody might want to call their shot, and he is Tyreek Hill, and it's going to be the second coming of Tyreek Hill. Will I? Maybe. Who knows? I can't tip my hand like that. But, yeah. So the most interesting pick is definitely Xavier Worthy. I'm interested in seeing what happens on day 2 with rounds 2 and 3. Like I said, now it wasn't touted as like a super deep or talented running back class, but there are a few. And, teams that needed a running back kind of addressed it in free agency. I'm interested in seeing what teams actually take these running backs. I would be worried if I was Tampa Bay, Rashad White. Like if they take a running back, I think that's going to shake it up a little bit. I have Zamir White. Now, will I keep him? Probably not. But right now he stands as a starter there in Vegas, which is interesting. There's a couple other spots that if they take a running back, I might be concerned. Mostly Mikey Vack and the Rashad White owner. If they take a running back in the second or third round, depending on who it is, I might be a little bit worried or a little bit concerned. Not that you won't keep him because he was great last year and he does so much work in the passing game, but we'll see. So night 2, may the odds ever be in your favor. I hope things don't get shaken up too much for y'all. Wink, wink. I hope there's complete chaos and people are second-guessing their keeper decisions and franchise player decisions. Maybe we'll see some trades in the league. Now I have the draft pick set. You all can start trading draft picks as well. Let's kind of see where everybody lands there. Remember, keep watching, keep winning. Tune in for the next episode while we recap the entire draft and see where people stand as far as, because keepers are due. Friendly reminder, franchise and keepers are due before the last pick of the draft. So make sure you're thinking about it and getting those into me. I'll recap those. Exciting times here in the Keepers by the Dozen. Better luck next year, nerds.